There we go. Welcome everybody to another Every Second Matters. If I can find different background, that'd be good. Boom. And then I guess that doesn't do anything unless I can't do anything about that. All right, so that's about as much background as we're gonna get. If somebody else jumps in here, you might see the background. Anyway, we're Every Second Matters chat, live conversation. We've been doing this. Haven't been doing it personally, but people have been doing this since 2013. It's Every Second Matters is an awareness campaign concept to think about and to share our Second Amendment, what the Second Amendment protects on the second day of each month. We started this in 2013 at the end of the year after the grassroots effort to resist the 23 executive actions that Obama had suggested as a reaction to the actions of an individual at the end of 2012. So Obama decided that was an opportunity to push an agenda towards removing the possession of firearms from law-abiding individuals. And while the internet was still, the internet wasn't new. The internet was probably one of the first times the internet or the gun community on the internet was able to mobilize in a way to be effective and to resist that concept of pushing through an agenda based on the reaction, the exploitation of the tragedy. And it's not a tragedy, it's an atrocity. It was created by an individual. It wasn't doomed to happen. It was intentionally, and it was just decided, they decided to use what they did because they would expect the media attention that they resulted in. Anyway, what seemed like a done deal at the time was resisted by grassroots effort. No individual, no superhero, no good Bloomberg, like a good guy version of Bloomberg. Nothing like that happened. There was no individual that deemed it happened, deemed us protected. The Second Amendment didn't jump up like Superman, fly around with a cape made out of brass or something, and then save us. Instead, a bunch of people just acted. And the concept of individual action accumulating or happening all together in unison echoed. And what we saw was the immediate, pretty much the immediate stand down of that initial bravado, that initial testing of the waters. That the first stand up and yell was met with an echo back, not an echo, a resounding negative response. And all the political strategists saw that, they backed down. And we saw lots of other attacks. It wasn't like that solved the problem and the war was over. Instead, that changed the tactics of the other side. They saw the resolve and the potential of a bunch of people who were not working together, but able to work together. Here we are a couple of years later, and it seems as if it's more difficult to work together, although I don't believe that. But is that perception engineered? Or is that perception a default? Or is that perception an eventuality? I don't think it's an eventuality after hundreds of years of people working together. I think it's more the case that we do work together and someone has to come along and disrupt that. Let's see. I say 10 in the chat, maybe 2 or 3 in the panel. Oh, okay. So I had asked earlier to the people that showed up ahead of time. We had Makojo showing up, Kingpin. Those are the 2 people that showed up earlier. Asked them how many people you think will show up to the show today, and then how many panel guests. I send out about 30-something invites to this show to people that are doing stuff in 2A, not just standing up around 2A, looking at it and taking selfies with it, but people that are doing stuff. And I send the links out, a couple of hours before this show, sometimes half an hour, but today it was a couple of hours before this show. I don't know, do I have your email, Kingpin? I can't find it under kingpin@gmail or something, so I guess I don't know what your email is. Email me if you would, and then I would send you a link. But because this dude would get a link if I knew what his email was, or off the top of my head. I probably have your email, but it's probably something like, Roberto Smith or something, whatever your real name is. So, and I don't know what that is, so I don't have, I don't know how to get it out of my email. But anyway, I send a link out to a bunch of people, and depending on if they're available and if they're interested, they'll jump in. We're not doing your run-of-the-mill, let's observe the news at least not when I host a show. I'm not interested in observing. I'm not interested in commenting. Instead, I'm interested in using the tools that we have available on the internet and more to, in 2021, we've got some amazing tools. Using those tools, the resources that we've already created, that others have created, making others aware of that, but then also capitalizing on that, utilizing that, and growing and evolving the conversation. Some people aren't up to that. The people I invite, I suspect would be, but I don't even bother inviting the people that wouldn't even be interested in that. Oh, okay, good. Delete that then if you would. Oh, shit. How do I get over here so I can delete that? I knew it was something like that, but. Oh, okay, good. Delete. Copy and. Oh, all I can do is block and report. I don't want to do either one of them. Go ahead and delete it, though. I did get the email. Thanks. Sorry about that. I knew it once I saw it. I just, like I say, I don't run around remembering everybody's names and stuff. So now I'm going over here, and I'm going to go to here, and I'm going to go to here, and then we'll just forward this bad daddy to this dude, and then I don't know if Foss is in here. Do I already have Foss in here? I don't know. I can't tell what I'm doing. So I'll close this out. Hit send. All right. Anyhow, what was that? We were just still out there, and then erstwhile's out there. Good afternoon. So anyway, that's what Every Second Matters is an awareness campaign. We came up with it at the end of 2013. A bunch of people came up with it in a series of live conversations, some of which are available. Most of them have been pulled down due to not being 2A enough. And then I don't know if people saved those or not before they were pulled down. I can't honestly remember right now. But some of them have been on the actual Every Second Matters website that we built up, something like 2017 or 18, I think, probably 17. We built that up based on the urging of the Florida Carry folks. We built up the site, and it was built, let's just say it's been built up in 2017, and it looks like it hasn't really been touched since 2018. But if you go over there, you can find a list somewhere down at the bottom is a link to every single Every Second Matters show that people have hosted, at least everyone I could find that people labeled at some point, like in 2017 or 18 or 19, maybe. No, it wasn't 19, 17 or 18 maybe is when that list was last updated. So there's at least links to the first shows, and then pretty much every show that's ever happened since then. So it's a loosely based thing. We based it off of Pink Pistols. Pink Pistols is an organization for, I don't know what they call themselves now, but back in the day it was gay gun owners. So I don't know, there was an article written and it said gay people should have guns. And then some dude, I think, I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but some person in some place, I think it was New York. I don't remember the story off the top of my head anymore, but they decided, hey, I like what they said in that article. Why don't we just do that? The internet was fairly new, and it was possible to create what do you want to call it, a group that you don't need to apply or join. You just are in the group if you say you are. And since it was just a loose, definition of what it was to be in Pink Pistols, I think is how it worked. That's the way they were happy with it. And I thought, after doing some research, I was like, oh, I like the way that that's set up. I suggested it to the people as we were setting it up that, why don't we do this as a loosely based thing that you're affiliated with it if you feel like you are, and if you don't, you don't. But there's certainly nothing to join. There's no infrastructure. There's no board of nothing. There's nobody owns it. It's not a thing. We did come up with the logo. We'll talk about that in a second. But that's really just a thing to cue eyeballs and to create conversation or to get a question asked. But other than that, it's just the concept of doing something on the second day of the month. And that's what we took from Pink Pistols, this idea that it's nothing you have to join or no rigid thing you need to do other than paying attention to what the Second Amendment protects on the second of the month as often as you want to do it. There's quite a few people that have probably been doing it the whole time that aren't super vocal about it. And then there's people that have been more or less And then there's people that come along and do it for a minute or two or a couple of months or even years, because I guess it's been going on for 8 years now. Is that how long it's been? And then everything in between. So with that brief explanation of what it is, I invite 30 something people out there. Clover just jumped in. Good afternoon, depending on where you are.
Hey.
Yeah, it's afternoon everywhere. And was I going to go down something? I tried to delete. I can't delete Kingpin's thing. So I think I'm an admin on that channel, but someone has an email sticking out there. There's a couple of things we'll chat about today if no one else comes in to chat about them. Otherwise, Clover jumped in if he's got any topics. Foss jumped in out there if you've got topics. Otherwise, Erstwhile is asking, have you talked to the CRS guy about what's going on with the auto key card guy? Nah, I won't do that. Clover is interviewing people. He might do something like that, but I don't know if he has any interest in it.
Erstwhile, you can get with me privately. I'm easy to contact, and I'll discuss that. And that's all I'll say about the CRS guy.
What does that mean?
I mean, exactly what I said. I don't get on and create hashtags, and I do my best not to disparage other people for. I'm not you. G-Webs would go, screw that guy. But I'm not going to say that because to me there's more to it. But yeah, but
I don't know who
if I were G-Webs, I would say screw that guy. So yeah, CRS Firearms. He's got a channel. He's got a channel here on YouTube.
Oh, is that the guy that? No, that's not the guy that stood around filming something.
The guy that stands in front of like this whiteboard and he's almost like in a pawn shop or something. It's really ratty backdrop and he's got this stuff written on a board. He points at it with knives and bayonets and gives impromptu legal advice, even though he says he doesn't give legal advice. And it's just, oh man, he annoys the Jesus out of me on more ways than one.
No, I've never even
that's
seen
my,
that.
you know me, I'm really PC and kid glove most of the time, unless we're talking about hashtag Demo Ranch hates kids. But yeah, that's not going to happen with him. So
yeah, I don't know who that is. So
yeah,
I'm not planning on doing that. I'm planning on trying to save the barn, so I won't be doing too much of that kind of stuff. I'll do this show as I can. Yeah. But there's lots of people out there that'll interview people. I don't. So here's something you can. You can ask the question, but yeah, we don't have any answers for you. I guess the auto key card thing is interesting, and I'm interested in that. I don't care about any of the drama. I'm just interested in adding it to the inventory of elements that will be part of the evolution of the NFA, because it's one of the things that is now becoming an issue. Let's think about it this way. Here's poor me, right? Here's my problems. Here's my issues that I have, right? Nobody ever cares about my feelings on things. I'm just trying to figure out the effing community, right? Because there's no rule book. If there's a rule book, I'll quit this and go to gardening because I'm pretty much ending all this anyway and just going into gardening. So if there's somebody's already done this, let me know. But basically, I'm just trying to figure out what's all going on. And when you start thinking about it, one way to think about it is chronologically. Another way would be to be like in order, not necessarily in time order, but in seniority or significance or something. You got your Second Amendment happened a long time ago. It's a pretty big deal. So I think the first, most people call that the branch of the tree or the roots of the tree or something. And then you get to like 1934 when you get the big NFA. You got the 1968, and of course you can start coming up with stuff that happened incrementally in there, but it's nowhere near as significant as the 34 or the 68. So those are your big elements. And then now you've got your assault weapons ban and your all this stuff that's happening now. And it's not just big, significant national level stuff. It's national level stuff. It's state level stuff. It's big stuff. It's little stuff. Things that seem insignificant, like the definition of a receiver that was created in the olden days and barely edited. And then the invention of the AR-15, which, throws it all into whack. So, there's so many different things that the 3D printing, right? The 80%ers, and now the
even more crazy than that, to interrupt you for a minute, is now we've got fire control groups that are serialized and considered the receiver,
Oh
right?
yeah, like
It's
that
like,
one SIG where the guts of the
yeah,
frame.
it's like
No,
that
exactly.
makes no sense.
And
Or
then,
like the Ruger, like the new Ruger Mark IVs. If you buy the upper, that's considered the receiver, but like the pistol frame with the fire control group and all,
is
which
that
would,
just a new version of an old Mark?
yeah, the new marks they just disassemble easier. Basically, you can take
Yeah,
the
but
upper
that was a
part apart.
weird one where like the chamber and the barrel and I guess I don't know what you'd call the upper receiver, I guess, was the top, and then it was a weird, complicated, goofy gun to put together. But yeah, then you had your
Right,
trigger and your moving parts in the grip, I guess.
right,
So in
right.
effect, it was sort of like an AR. I mean, it didn't look anything like
But
it. It didn't
it's
work
but
like
the
it, but it had
receiver,
two pieces
yeah,
of
it is
guts.
an AR, right? It's got an upper and a lower, similar
Well,
to
it's
an
got
AR,
two
because
pieces of guts. They've taken the receiver definition and pushed it into two parts because
well, they
the
pushed it
NFA
into,
is garbage and it was written
yeah,
poorly and it
yeah,
was done to infringe society, but not necessarily enforced in any way, shape, or form. So that as people created things and asked if it was in compliance, they said yes, 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 all through the years
hmm,
until we've got this spaghetti knot mess of what is and isn't. And now
right,
they want to
right.
start combing through that. So anyway, all I was getting at though is that when you're trying to look at it from my place, where I'm just one guy trying to figure out what the hell our community is, and when you
Right.
get to the part of the community that deals with compliance with the law, because we're law abiding, we abide the law, we have to know what the law is. That's difficult. We have, like I say, there's law, there's federal law, there's court cases, there's state level stuff that we have to deal with. There's the interactions between them. There's travel, right? There's age
Right.
groups. There's all kinds of things that get involved in there. And now we have new things being added. So getting back to the key card, I'm super interested in how the key card, a sheet of metal, basically a business card made out of metal with not even laser engraved, just some drawings on a piece of business card size piece of metal. So you take a business card piece of metal and then you draw something on it with a Sharpie. There's people in jail right now. And if somebody would drop a link to that, that'd be great. I'll go try to find it here. I didn't really bring a bunch of shit to the show, but that's horrible. There's somebody in jail and their family is in jail with them because they, for a joke or for whatever reason, maybe even with bad intent. I really don't know because I think that's what this whole thing is. People are worried about peeling the onion. Let's not worry about that the onion is jammed in everybody's eyeball. Let's start worrying about peeling it and figuring out who grew the onion or something. I mean, you have to definitely understand history, but when it's happening, you also have to react and be getting people out of jail, perhaps, or figuring out ways to unite the community on around things that are important, like getting families out of jail that are in jail for bullshit, writing something on a piece of metal as a joke or as an ironic meme in real life, or like I say, maybe it was malicious. Maybe he really thought that by drawing some pictures on a piece of metal, he was going to do something horrible and heinous. But I'm pretty sure the First Amendment allows you to do all that until the other individuals do the heinous shit, right? Unless I'm wrong. And if that becomes a First, Second Amendment issue, right on, right? Like let's be free and let's figure that all out. But anyway, so as far as that stuff goes, I know very little about it other than it's a new emerging element that here's what I'm going to say. Tell me if I'm wrong. It's going to make the NFA not enforceable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, or are we not already at that point in a way?
Technically,
I
I think
mean,
we've been there for a while, but yes,
I
but
mean,
that's
look
another
at
nail
the,
in that coffin. Right?
you've got all so many discrepancies, right? And I want to go back and make sure, because this is the Every Second Matters chat. And I mean, we may have newbies that are listening. Just because there's nobody typing in the chat doesn't mean that eventually somebody doesn't pick up on this. And here's what's crazy is, you know, a firearm used to be a firearm. It was a complete package. It was fully functional. And then all of a sudden, like you said with the AR-15, the firearm is no longer the firearm. It can just be a series of components of said firearm. And in the case of the AR-15, it was basically what held the magazine, what held the trigger was considered the firearm. Then you moved into what we were talking about now, which is completely the opposite with the Rugers. The part that houses the magazine and the trigger is not the firearm, the barrel and the chamber is directly the opposite from the way the AR-15 is defined. And it's like, And then the SIG stuff, which there's other ones too. I think the little honor guard pistols and several other ones use that modular fire control group, and it's basically some sheet metal and a trigger. It's not even a frame or anything else that's considered a firearm. So it's like, how did we go from a firearm is a firearm, right? You pick it up, you load it, you shoot it, to a firearm is some little stupid component somewhere. It's like, how did we get here? So I'm with you. I think you were asking that. I think you were asking that question, right? Kind of like, how did we get there?
No, not so much, but if you want to bring that up, that's fine. So how we got there is because in the olden days, publishing was done by somebody writing on a piece of paper, and then eventually there was a telegraph, so they could telegraph it to a publishing house, and then they could print it into a book or a newspaper, and then it could get disseminated, and then people that could afford it or could read would read it, and then the story would get told, and like anybody knows, you word of mouth, the stories get exaggerated and blown out of proportion. I suspect, like anything, media can either create or it can copy. So once the stories went crazy and people figured out that those were more interesting than the realistic explanations, the documentaries weren't as interesting as the dramas, then the stories went crazy. They call those dime novels. So that concept has been around for a long, long time. You know, the cave paintings of the actual drawings were probably not as neat as the exaggerated monster looking drawings, right? Like that is not uncommon and unusual for humans. We like the extremes. It has something to do with, you know, flight or fight and being able to identify what's good or bad, right? So I think it all goes down to that. So we had the dime novels. Our society, our culture was ingrained with, you know, the expansion in the Wild West, and then we had the gangsters with the prohibition, whatever the concept. No. The vast amount of firearms that were being created by the companies after World War One.
Proliferation.
Yeah. Thank you. Since there was no, federal restrictions or infringements on it, they were basically making Tommy guns. Well, not Tommy guns yet, but they were making all kinds of guns, and people were using them, and no one gave a shit until the gangsters figured out that they could just steal these kind of guns. And again, when your goal is to beat your chest and not have to get into a fight because you can have a reputation that, people are happy to get robbed by you and police are feared to fight you. That kind of stuff happened. You got the dime store novel effect. So you have these gangsters that either were bigger than life or made, the media made them seem bigger than life. Either way, they had this reputation of being bigger than the cops and being more powerful than the cops. This is in a day and age when there was barely automobiles that worked worth a shit, and that there was no radios in cars yet. You had to stop and get into a police box and then call the main place, and then they would call somebody in the next town over, and then they would try to find out where Charlie's at, and then they would send Charlie out. So once you got across a state line, a county line, you were free. You don't remember those from the TVs and the cartoons?
Oh, yeah.
Those are the days of 1934 in the 1920s. So then they make a suppressor, and a bunch of people in New York assume, and they, the same thing, cowboy dime novel bullshit, or just fear tactics. They decide, okay, suppressors, that's the last straw. Like mufflers for cars, like now we're going to have silent machine guns and gangsters. And they made the 1934, and they tried to remove everything. So how did we get to this? We just got to it by that evolution. And then nobody really fought because in 1934, there wasn't enough coordinated effort to resist. Nobody really fought it because there was nothing to fight. That was the first punch. So then there was a bunch of hunters. You had World War II. World War II, everybody goes out and gets familiar with guns. They use guns. They come home. They have PTSD just like everybody else would after having to kill other human beings. And then they come back. And how do you deal with that kind of stress? And you've got the boom of the economy and the population, right? You've got urban sprawl. What are you supposed to do to relieve your stress? You go hunting. You take those firearms that you used in the military, which they're prolific again, they're everywhere and they're cheap. You start to modify them because they're not made for hunting animals. They're made for killing people. And that's not what you want for going hunting. And maybe you don't want to see that anymore. Maybe you want to customize your rifle just like every Indian and cowboy did back in the olden days, right? So you buy those cheap guns and you modify them. And the same thing with the ammo. You don't use the same old bullet that was designed for going through a car door. You start making ammo that's designed for animals. So the people who were anti-individual use of tools started to go after hunters. So the first evolution of anti-gun was anti-hunting. And they didn't say, hey, let's stop the NFA. They said, hey, let's protect our wildlife areas. Let's stop this marginalization of hunters, and let's create orange, right? Let's have hunter safety. Let's teach our kids and scouts about the safe use of guns or whatever. And the anti said, oh, that doesn't work. Those are free people using tools. So let's change our tactics and let's persecute the use of gun training in schools. Let's get rid of that. That must be unsafe. So how did we get to this? Because it's just, there's no grand plan and there's no like, directions. So we have evolved. We've pursued our interests peacefully. They have decided there's a problem with that and attacked us. And we haven't had the resolve or the ability to defend everything always. So we've had to deal with attacks as they come. And that means we've had a scattered defense. And that means we've allowed, we've had a defense line that has had openings and they've attacked them. So I don't think it's like a bunch of people who are sitting around not doing anything. I just think that we've been attempting to enjoy our lives while we're defending attacks from all different angles throughout time.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Well, I just don't get, I just don't get how, again, I mean, I get what you're saying, but then I don't get like, Ruger has to make submissions and then somebody at the ATF in the technology or whatever decides this or that or the other based on existing regulations, existing legislation. How you go from a bolt, a chamber, a barrel is an upper, it's not regulated, to all of a sudden it is, and the complete opposite is not, or that simply a trigger mechanism is now the regulated part. There's in a certain way, like with the let's take the trigger mechanism part, right? The like the SIG, right? The fire control group. In a certain way, that's kind of like more freedom because like everything but that one little piece, right? So it's no longer like, a receiver. So, you can have many more options without having to worry about the regulation once you've got that little piece. So, I mean, was that a move to chip back toward freedom by some of these companies, or was that just a circumstance of the invention of said product and what the ATF said it classified
I remember when it came out, and I don't remember anybody giving. I mean, I remember Yankee thinking that was a big deal, and we would have conversations whenever that came out. So I'm trying to remember when that was, like maybe 16 or 17 or something like that.
Yeah.
So whenever it came out, it was sort of like no one knew what it was yet because it was new, and we would have conversations occasionally about like what's next. And I've always been an advocate, like what's next in firearms tech. And I've always been an advocate of projectiles. I'd like to see projectiles change to something ceramic or glass or something that's not, completely renewable. So we don't even have to think about projectile production. Yeah. And so I think a heavy ceramic would be awesome. But anyway, Yankee's big thing for years because of that SIG was this idea of like a chassis serialized thing. So I remember when it came out, because of the concept that it was something new, and I'll acknowledge that is a new thing. The idea that serialized, it's really not the trigger group. The trigger group is in the chassis thing that holds the trigger group, but I'm sure it's that chassis that's serialized because you can still trigger or whatever.
Right.
But that concept that's your gun and not the plastic part that holds the rails. But okay, so the question, how does it get to there? Again, I gave all that preface to go like, this whole thing's been a long game. This whole thing, it's not really a game. It's just the long evolution of it all. So in that long evolution of it all, they had that in 1934. Its goal was to stop people from possessing firearms, put a massive tax on it, make it a massive burden. Let's keep these guns out of the control of people or out of the, make it difficult to obtain. What happens then is there's none for the criminals to steal. Criminals will never be able to figure how to make their own, based on the plans that are out there and having, the ability to make anything else they want. They will never make guns. So what we'll do is we'll rid the world of guns because since you can't legally buy them, legal gun owners will oblige and not buy them, right? That was their goal. So they did that and they wrote a bunch of things. And let's say that they were really good lawyers and just, it's just not accurate, but let's just say it was black powder at the time. But then 6 minutes after they write this law, somebody invents a revolver. And then they're like, dang it, what do we do now? Because, we didn't have anything in there. So I don't know how many times they've edited it, not very many. But when something comes along that changes it or screws with it, they add something. For example, when the firearms, the 12 gauge firearms came along more recently, right? The concept of a receiver that has never been a shotgun, but it's a 12 gauge receiver. And then when you put this kind of grip on it and this length of barrel on it, it becomes a thing that operates, but it doesn't fall under the definition of anything they came up with in 1934. And that's what I'm getting at, is that as things evolve, each one of those things had to be brought to what's called the technology branch of the ATF. They say, hey, I'd like to create this thing, and it doesn't really fall under any definitions that we can, it's not an obvious, any definition. Can you help us? And that's just the way it's written, because they knew that when they wrote this law that, people are going to come up with things that don't fit. So here's the process. So all throughout time, every gun that we've seen since, stupid law was invented in 34, every gun has had to go through the technology branch at some point or another and find out, here. And then they go, okay, I'm changing this on it. And they go, okay, that's basically the same thing. Or like, oh, no, you changed it in such a way that now it's a whole different thing, right? So that's where it comes from. So that's the mechanism. The reason is because I believe in 1976, and I still haven't had the time to research this piece, but there's something called the Privacy Act. I think it was the Privacy Act of 1976, but I've only barely come adjacent to it a few times. I haven't been able to pursue it. I suspect it has to do with people from Silicon Valley that everybody hates all the time, who created the concept of technology of, computerized stuff using circuitry to do the act of computing. And when they started to figure this all out, like, it's interesting to look at that. It's a whole different thing than Second Amendment stuff. But when you look at the evolution of technology, when people were beginning this whole thing, they saw the end of it. They saw where it was going, even though they knew that the material wasn't there to do what they had in mind. They could see the eventuality of it all. And when they saw that computers were going to turn into Orwellian 1984 ability very fast, in 1976, they put controls on, or they petitioned, and I believe they were successful in putting restraints on government, called something like the Privacy Act of 1976, that said, hey, we know computers are coming, so just to double down on it, you cannot keep lists of us. Government cannot keep lists of us. Some of the things we have learned from history is that it's not a good idea for government to have lists of us. They don't hold lists good, and they don't use them good. They're not good people. They're not good stewards. They're not good accountants. Nothing is good about the government having lists of us, especially when they do stuff with those lists of us. And that has nothing to do with guns. That was like, period. Lists of us shouldn't exist. That's one of the reasons the healthcare is the way it is. And a lot of the stuff that, well, it's like the interstate commerce. Now, I'm not a lawyer, Walt, or somebody would know more about this perhaps, but in my opinion, the interstate commerce is one of those pieces of thread that holds together a seam that is a fold and a pocket that we just deal with, because most of us have lived our lives not realizing that freaking pocket or that seam or whatever it is, that fold in the fabric is only there because of some little thread. And that little thread was placed there by some a-hole jerks. And, it doesn't need to be there. Like, it wasn't designed to be there. They stuck it there and we've just dealt with it. We don't even know what it's like to be without that. And that's one of those things where, anyway, like I say, I'll let them decide if that's the case. But I believe the Privacy Act is one of those things that actually protects us in so many ways, so that, when people go, oh, it takes so long for the NICS check. My answer is always, do you want to live in a world where the government can do a NICS check like that on you? You want to live in a world where the government knows so much about you that they can make a yes or no decision like that? I mean, right. Especially with everything else that's going on in the world. Do we want to live in that kind of a government, with the government with that ability? Anyway, so I think that's how we get to like the weirdness of the receivers, because that stuff was written in, invented in the 50s, developed through the 60s and 70s. And now it's just all taken. I mean, can you imagine what Stoner would think today? How amazing would Stoner think today is?
Right.
Or would he hate it?
Well, what worries me, and I don't know if this is valid or not, but what worries me is, as we've talked about, you've got various conflicting components that are considered the firearm, right? So at what point do they make the leap to all components, or any component is considered a firearm? You feel what I'm saying?
No, yeah, exactly.
So that's the danger in all of this, with the inconsistencies.
Well, and then, guns lead the way on stuff, I think, or at least when we're focused on it, what we see happening to us, then we start to see it happen in other places. So yeah, if they say something like blah, 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 and then this leads to that, well, then why should you be able to buy this for your car? Or why should you be able to buy that for your computer, or this for your radio? Why do you need that antenna?
Well, that's valid, I suppose.
Well, I'm just saying, like, it's just that, it's not like it's what was us? I mean, that's just the kind of
Right.
overreach. I don't want to
Well,
government.
I know that there's been a lot of talk about regulating all firearm parts or firearm components, right? Well, it looks to me like with the help of the industry and innovation, and I'm not saying directly, I'm not saying that they were complicit, but with the help of them in all the conflicting parts that are considered the registered component, that are considered the receiver or considered the firearm, there's there's already potential avenues in play for them to make that leap and go, wait a minute, whoa, wait a minute, an AR-15 upper. Well, hold on a minute, the Ruger upper is registered, so yeah, the AR upper now has to be registered. Oh, well, wait a minute, that little frame piece in the SIG. So now, yeah, all that's got to be registered now too. Oh, that lower on the Ruger. Oh, yeah, that's right, because the lower on the AR has to be registered. So yeah, everything just needs to be registered and cataloged and part of a receiver now.
Well, yeah, so you can look at that side of it for sure, because that would be one, if we just didn't do nothing and they decided to run rampant with the interpretation of the situation, then that would be the way it would go. But, it could easily be used the other way to appeal to a judge or a jury to say,
Yep.
look, they could do this and they could do this and they could do this. So why do we even allow them the power to do any of it?
Yep.
So instead of going, oh, don't do that to us, please, we could just as easily be rallying together. And I'm going to continue to suggest, after actually watching the press conference and now days after the press conference and no consequence other than me continuing to say it, watch the press conference. And when our president who petitioned, to be president, and then every time it's possible, he uses the Second Amendment attacks as a distraction. That guy, when asked about, when he's going to follow up with, pursuing attacks on our right to own, what did he do? He immediately changed the subject. So again, are we going to stand around and go, please don't, push further, or please don't interpret that in a bad way? Or when are we going to start saying, justify the 4473, justify the NFA, give us constitutional carry, give us the Hearing Protection Act, and let them start to defend 4 major national attacks. And if you don't like one of those 4 things, and that's not the only ones, get on board with your state problems, with forming coalitions of states, with the state Second Amendment sanctuary stuff. Arizona, I guess, has one sitting at the governor's desk. I think Dead Horse just showed me that Utah is getting one as well. The concept of the state saying your federal level laws ain't going to work here anymore. So, there's 4 national level things we could be taking to push offense. In other words, national level defense of the rights protected by the Second Amendment. Mm-hmm. Instead, we've got people that are content with not doing that. And whenever we're ready to change subjects, the real topic, which blew me away this month, is the topic for the day.
Do it.
So it's been out there, I guess, and it's probably, again, something that's just human nature, right? You can exploit younger people. So if you're an exploiter, you're going to want to focus on younger people, right? That's just been around since forever because of the way that we age through time or whatever. We start out inexperienced. Very rarely do we get experience given to us quickly enough that we can capitalize on it while we are young. Sure. All right. So this month, I realized that there's a overwhelming interest, whatever to say, like focus on new Second Amendment advocates over retaining old, or I forgot however I framed it. You guys saw whatever I put up for a poster or a poll earlier in the month.
Yeah, the old guard. Yeah.
Yeah, so that blew me away because I had never thought about it. I mean, everything about everything we do is community, bringing people together. And that's me. I'm just, crippled by my interest in having, experience and seeing people that don't necessarily get along together, coming together for a common goal, figuring out ways to work together, using that experience to then work together in even better ways to be, I guess, more resistant to the tactics of the other side to make us pull apart. So I'm just used to that from when I was a little kid. I mean, I didn't go into sports, but it had to be like that in little kids sports where a bunch of little kids get together and now they're on the same team and they got to play another team. It has to be like that. I mean, I've never done it, but it has to be like that, right? Those football teams and baseball teams and all that, they don't hate each other. I mean, a couple of them might hate each other, but for the most part, those kids just all are on the same team. They're wearing the same shirt. They all play together, right? It was like
Right.
that for scouts. It was like that for other stuff. I mean, a few of us might not like each other, but we were a troop and we were, competing against other kids. We were in class or something. We were competing against other classes. Like we're used to that. Anyway, I've just always thought of it that way. That again, one of the challenges of a group is to have that coherence or that, that challenge and that hopefully adversity, or not adversity, but hopefully overcoming the adversity of working together. And part of that is the different points of view, but then the different ages. And I mean, come on, every single thing I've ever participated in my whole life has been old people offering advice and criticism and young people coming up with new ideas and criticism and everybody figuring it out together. And usually everybody growing, right? And then the old people chilling and getting better and the young kids getting that experience that they need and getting stronger, right? And then bonding relationships through time. Like I've always done that, and I'm crippled by experience that's been positive like that, I guess. Mm-hmm. So now I find out that there's people that don't give a effing crap about anybody who's been doing this longer than about 5 weeks. In fact, I suspect they prey on the new, like they need the new. And this overwhelming group of new people just gives them a giant, it's like a whale swimming through sardines or whatever, however, that happens in the ocean. But that whale isn't fishing. That whale's just swimming. And if a shit ton of sardines like halfway fall into its mouth or not, what does it care? It has a shit ton of other sardines in its mouth. It don't give a crap about any individual sardine. That blew me away. And I had no idea. And I started asking questions, and it's been reinforced that. And I'm thinking, wow, because I was trying to express this. I don't know if in every second matters, but back before I quit doing the Daily Gun Show, I was trying to express that too, that it's frustrating to see that there's, when we go into battle, everybody's got to decide they're going to fight or sit down and watch, right? Mm-hmm. And then the people that fight are going to decide to do it alone, or they're going to work with somebody, or they're going to, support somebody, or they're going to do whatever they're going to do. And it all goes down, right? And then it ends. And, then we have to pick up the pieces and you decide my route of action was appropriate or not, or I like what that guy did better, or she's the one, like I'm doing her tactic next time. Or you decide, I got to lick all my wounds and it costs too much, I'm out of here. Or this was wrong, like I should have been on the other side, right? Like who knows? But, that's basically what happens. You get ready for war, you fight, you get done, and then you're either getting ready again or you're out of the game. And like I say, I think in past, trying to describe that in the past, I thought that's what we've been heading into with the new presidency and the, bravado about going after guns and the speculation of what he might do, right? And then, of course, the weirdness that was happening with the potential disruption of communication channels, right? All of that led to like a real serious stress level or, area of concern that like, wow, we could really be being manipulated here. We could really lose contact here. This is stressful. And as I was trying to describe it then, I don't know if you were in here who I was talking to, but, I consider that like the fog or the smoke. You have to just get in there and start fighting. And you're going to find people that are wounded, and there's going to be people helping those people, and there's going to be people fighting, and there's going to be skirmishes and ambushes and victories and losses, right? But there's also going to be assholes in there exploiting the situation, and they're going to be profiting the whole freaking time. And like, as somebody's dying, they're grabbing their gear, and then they're going to the next dying person and grabbing their gear. And then when it's all over, they're selling that gear. I'm using weird analogies, but there's going to be those types of people. And at the end of it all, you have to either recognize those people exist and just go, well, at least we got the gear collected. They did it in an unscrupulous bullshit way. But, the gear's collected and I didn't have to go pick up my dead comrade. They were the vulture that did it, right? Sometimes you have to acknowledge that there's, assholes on your team, and at least they're pointed in the direction that you are.
Sure.
But then there's also people that prey, that are just there, and they might as well be working for Bloomberg, like literally, because they are only going to prey. They're only going to exploit. They're only going to pull. And if they've sat there time and time again, if they've literally set up shop, if they have a foundation made of concrete in this situation, and you walk up to them and they exploit you, like it's a freaking, not just a fare that comes traveling to town, but like a thing on the side of the road that's been there forever, and the freaking road signs are losing paint because they don't even have to try anymore, that you're going to stop there because it's a good place to get gas, and they're going to exploit you for that thing that's behind the curtain or whatever. Those people, fuck them. So that's what bothers me, is I thought that those people were just the weirdos and, the creeps and cloaks that were going to, prey on the innocent, and if enough education and awareness was out there, we'd be aware of those people and we'd get as many people away from them as possible. But no, I think that there's more and more people. Those people aren't in cloaks. Those people are wearing the freaking Walmart welcome vests and saying, "Hey, welcome to the fight. Here's here's your membership form. Fill out this, and for $40 later, think about it. If 1 million people come along and pay you $40 and never come back again, you still got 40 million bucks."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not just scorning somebody with 1 million members. It's very few things. I'm just using that as a giant example. But if there's people that are willing to just sit there and exploit, that's frustrating as shit. And what do you do when most people are more interested in what's walking through the door than what's in the room that they're walking into the door for?
Right.
So anyway, that's what I was going to say is the thing that got me this month. I had no idea that was even a thing. And what do you do? Like, you can't, what are you going to do? You can't make people go, "Hey, wait a minute. The content is more important, more valuable, more important in the long run than the wrapping, than the marketing that gets people to buy the content."
Right.
Because I've been frustrated with the content on a couple of things for a while, waiting for it to become leadership, waiting for it to become guidance, right? Waiting for it to become advice or suggestions, but instead it's been observation and regurgitation. "Hey, remember that this happened," or "Here's what happened this week," or "Here's what somebody said."
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I guess, the biggest frustration is, aren't we suckers if we just constantly watch, observe, and react? I've said this many times. Aren't we just a mechanism for the antis, for the people that want to use us against ourselves? If we simply do the same thing every time, and we are not just content, but we're more interested in the people that want to just say stuff than we are to the people that are, I don't want to use geek, I say doing stuff, but the people that have been around for a while that may have, I don't know, I guess either advice or what's the name word? Experience.
Right.
But then the people with advice and experience, I mean, name them. They're not even around. I guess they write a book or two and then leave. But I don't think this is a fairly new phenomenon. It's not like they sat around for years being the center of attention and like constantly people coming to them and they were rich and famous. I mean, they've always been obscure people doing it for their own passions and stuff, right? Like, name a 2A author. None of them are rich and famous. Like, some of them are known. That's about it.
Right.
Anyway, so that's me ranting. Do you got any opinion on that one? What do you think? As far as the being content with just walking, welcoming the new people in the door versus rallying the troops versus having like useful meetings of groups of people, letting the new people observe and figure it out instead of everything being welcome to the group, welcome to the group, welcome to the group. Like, how long do you expect people to stick around if all you ever say is welcome to the group? It just ghosted you there. So what do you think about that concept, I guess, all around?
You mean kind of giving them a task sheet or a something?
I don't have an alternative. It's kind of new to me, but I guess I just summed it up there. That I get, one of my frustrations has been, I mean, you've heard me say it before, like, how often are we going to interview each other? Like, how often do we need another introduction to what everybody? And it's sort of that, like, well, if you got 1 million people waiting in line, and who knows how many people in the room, but you can make $40 every time you introduce somebody to, let somebody in the room. Who really cares what's going on in the room? If people are waiting in line in like 1 million deep to get into that room, what do you even care what's going on in the room anymore? All you got to do is charge $1 to get in the room. Now you got $1 million. If you charge $40 to get in the room, you got $40 million. Right. And then what do you got to do? What happens if 1 million people walk in that room and go, "Man, this is lame," and then never go back again? You don't care because you have made $40 million. So that's, I guess, the frustration is if we're just always saying, "Welcome, welcome, welcome, welcome. Here's me, welcome, here's me, here's welcome, welcome, here's me." Man, I don't want to get off on a rant, but I mean, there's a couple of organizations that now that I've been paying attention haven't done a damn thing except exist, period.
Yep.
Haven't done nothing. They'll take the American flag, they'll throw it on the floor, they'll throw one of their items on it, and they'll brand it with their logo, and then say something that's on 1 million other memes, right? They'll do that, but is that doing anything?
Right.
But that's what I'm saying. It does something for the person who's like, oh, I just bought a gun. This is cool. Shit. Do I have a right to own a gun? Like, oh, I'm going to go look on the internet. Oh, crap. Look at this flag on the fore and it's got a logo on it. Oh, this guy must be so patriotic that he doesn't give a shit about the flag code. Like, I am definitely going to give this son of a bitch $40. And then you get in there and you're like, damn, all they do is throw the American flag on the floor, wrinkle it up. Half the time they throw their dirty ass gun on it, then write some slogan that they pirated off some other meme. And then that's all I get for my $40. Well, I'm never going to join this organization again. Do you think that organization gives a flying crap if you ever join it again?
Right.
Because they got a million people waiting in line. And that's where I'm not even going to start complaining, because every organization is, I'm probably guilty of it 17 different ways. Nobody's perfect or what, right? I'm just saying, like, that's where we're going to get our butt kicked, because we are individuals. And, you know, unless we get like a culture or a community where we're used to like, hey, come in, but don't pay attention to those assholes. Like, they're clowns. You know, until we've got that kind of atmosphere, I guess, or that kind of tradition or something, which I don't even know if you can you create traditions anymore? Till we got something like that, we might just be vulnerable, or what's the word? Like, I guess vulnerable, or I guess that's the only word I think of, susceptible to, because I don't think anybody has to do that to us. That's just the human nature again.
Right.
And again, like, I can either welcome new people in who don't judge me at all, who don't give a shit. All I got to do is have some credential, and all I got to do is welcome in the door and get $40, you know, and change the price. If you're a local level thing, $20. If you're an individual, $5 on Patreon. If you're a national level thing, $50, you know, whatever. Change the price and scale to whatever you're doing. But if everybody's just content to talk to the new guy, that sucks. Because you've been around long enough now. There's good people that have come and gone. And some people die. That sucks, right? Or something happens and you just can't, which sucks also. That's life. And, you know, we're mammals and we live on a fragile thing with some atmosphere, and we're winging through a giant galaxy and whatever. So, you know, that's going to happen. But the people that come in and are willing and able and just get sick of it or get frustrated by I'm attempting to put words on all this so that people can say, that's the thing that I'm sick of. And then people can go, okay, if enough people go, oh, there's a problem there, we can address it. You know what I mean? But I think that's been something that I've been trying to put my finger on for a while. So when I heard that this month, I was like, wow, that's interesting. And it's frustrating as shit at the same time. I mean, too many Eggo waffles involved? Yeah, I don't know. I guess so. I mean, I think that's a thing. Do you guys watch Mom at Arms on the Instagram? I think it's a couple of people. It's mom dash arms are also underscores, so it's like 3 words, and I think it's more than one person, because the posts will have like a different flair or attitude or whatever, you know, different flavor to them. And let's see, hold on, Kingpin saying, i.e. everyone falling over themselves for new gun owners and liberal gun owners. Yeah, except you're not going to catch me with that liberal thing, because that's bullshit, and you're hurting yourself by putting that in there. Now, here's the thing. It's not your fault because you're old and you know what liberal means in this world, in the world that we live in. These youngins, these little stupid ass kids come along and they either think it's funny. Remember, we used to rip our jeans and shit. We wore our hats backwards and Grandpa got pissed just because we wore our hats backwards, right? And did we ever put our hats forwards? Fuck no, because we could put our hats backwards and piss off Grandpa. Not because we hated him, because he'd throw a freaking conniption, and he needed to figure out there wasn't a need to throw a conniption over that, right? Well, that's what's happening to y'all. Y'all are falling for that same bullshit, and they're not going to stop doing it, because I've asked them and I've told it to them more than once. They know what the hell they're doing, and they just don't give a shit. So you're screwed yourself over for not listening to them, because here's the thing. Let me put it in a different way. All the son of a bitch asshole infringement antis speak French. We don't speak French because we're not fucking French, right? And then there's the new kids on the block come along and they can speak like shitty French or some sort of Frenchy words, right? That sound French. And we're like, fuck you. What are you saying that shit for? It sounds stupid. But guess what? They can speak to those other people who speak a fucking foreign language. Mm-hmm. So you can either hate on that or you can learn French. You can also not learn what your kids are doing and then get sad when something horrible happens to your kids, right? Now, that's a lot more personal, and it's mean if something happens to somebody's kid. But I'm just trying to throw some exaggerated examples out there. We can understand that the new breed uses different words and put up a wall, or just don't worry about it. I'm not asking you to be friends with them. Don't give a shit. but listen to what they're saying, because even though they call themselves liberals, they're just gun owners with different ways of speaking Frenchy words to the French. But you don't have to listen to me. I don't give a shit. So I just don't agree with you that liberal gun owners are a problem. Liberal gun owners are idiots, and they run around using dumb words and alienating themselves. And then the worst part is they call themselves liberal gun owners, knowing good and damn well that there's a connotation to that word. And then they sit over there to themselves going, nobody listens to us, and they don't play with us, and we don't get invited to their games. Oh, fucking. So that's everybody's issue. I'm sitting here, I'll listen to them, and I'm not going to agree with them. So that's as easy as you can make it, or you can make it as difficult as you want.
I'll agree to a certain extent, and that's a big issue we have is, people draw these lines, people draw these all types of lines in the sand, right? And so it's they may be 100% in agreement with 2A, but then there's something else, and it's usually a social issue, quite honestly, but there's something else, and then that person's got to draw the line. So even though they're 100% a 2A ally, because there's something over here, it's like, let's put up a wall. Let's keep those. All we want is absolute homogenous thinking, and somehow we're going to move forward with 100% homogenous thinking. It's kind of like the innovation that you mentioned with the firearm industry and what that sparked and everything else, and the innovation in tech. That doesn't happen with homogenous thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
and so, we just have to recognize that. I don't say that I'm not saying you have to agree with everything somebody says. I'm not saying you don't get offended, that you don't take umbrage. I'm not saying that. But you have to be open-minded enough to know that we don't move forward that way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that we're going to be so much better once the conversations shift to where they can't, the actual antis can't challenge nothing. Because once you start talking in Frenchy to the French, then they go dumbfounded because they're just used to saying au revoir, blah, 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 or whatever. And then we go, huh? And they go, haha, we won because they can't speak our weird ass shit. And then they walk away like they won. Well, if we can go, if they say blah, 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 and we go blah, 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 back at them, then guess what? They're not used to that. And we've taken it another level. I'll go back to what we said before. We can either sit around waiting and defending and just reacting, or we can start figuring out all kinds of ways to just stop issues, use resources and time to offense, to work the other way.
So, you're making a point, and something that I've said repeatedly, after talking with Laura from Liberal Gun Club, that she and the other ones that I've spoken with, briefly anyway, there too, are completely on board. They talk to these liberal, Democrat, whatever label or box you want to put on it, right? Politicians all the time, right? They speak the French that you're talking about, right? And so I see so much frustration with people that can't speak the French that you're talking about with their particular politician or whatever it might be. And they get so frustrated to the point that they even give up. I see that a lot.
Yes, and that's the point.
Like, okay, if you can't speak French, you have a 2A ally, at least in some capacity here. Why not get a little bit of French lesson like you're talking about? Or if nothing else, give them, hey, here's my thought. Here's what I want to communicate, and let them tell you how to say that. You don't even have to learn how to speak French. You just have to learn how to say, where's the bathroom? You get what I'm saying?
No. I think we're both saying the same thing, or we've evolved it into this. They're translators. Just like when you're overseas and you're doing something and you're too stupid to learn the language of where you're going or the dialect of where you're going, right? Or your branch doesn't make you learn the language of where you're going, or doesn't have the, faith in you to think that you can learn the language of where you're going, right? Or maybe you're not going to be there long enough to learn the language, but whatever. You got interpreters, and those terps will go along, and they are able to speak both languages almost fluently. And right, he's saying it right here. Ghost saying it right here, right? And that's what we can. You don't trust an interpreter. Yeah. You don't give a. You mean sometimes you can implicitly trust an interpreter. In fact, I've heard stories of guys that have done things over and above for their interpreters. But if a new interpreter comes along, you don't have implicit trust. You assume that they're on your side, but with skepticism, right?
Well,
And
trust
until
but
that,
verify. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But so yeah, maybe that's the way to think of this as we and then the same for them. Like we can be their
Well, and
interpreters for the rest of
yeah,
the world because while I don't speak for every gun owner, and I certainly don't speak for a whole bunch of freaking extreme assholes, right? Like I can
right,
help those people that are just trying to speak French or like speaking French for whatever freaking reason.
right.
I can help them talk to people
So
over here that ain't gonna bother.
yeah, 100%. And the thing is, you make the analogy to if you was going to conduct business, let's say in a foreign country, right? And you
Oh yeah,
and you
that's what
get
I meant.
and you
Foreign
hire an
conducting
interpreter,
business. That's what I meant.
or whatever. Just because you have that interpreter at your disposal doesn't mean that you and that interpreter are on 100% agreement on everything in freaking life. That doesn't have to exist. All they have to do is interpret your thoughts into the correct language, right? Or your words into the correct language. And so there's this dichotomy going on that because they speak another language, well, we have to be just like them in every way, shape, form, and fashion if we utilize that language. And it's like, that makes
Uh,
absolutely no sense to me, right?
yeah, you're
You can
just answering
translate any movie into Spanish and it's still the same movie.
That's a good analogy. Now, you're answering Ghost's questions, but that's pretty much what I was going to say. He says from before, he said, "Oh, it sounds like you're saying compromise our ideals to learn their language. People will crucify you." He's joking about the craziness, but no, that's the thing. I'm sure someone who wants to summarize it incorrectly or create an issue would summarize it like that, but he's just playing around. But no, that's the thing. It's not anything about compromising ideals. Exactly what Clover just said. Like keeping your ideals 100%. Now, maybe being willing to change your mind about shit is up to you. That's a whole different conversation. And if
Sure.
you think that being rigid is the way to go, talk to a petrified tree and see how many petrified trees are still standing, right? Like you can be rigid in certain circumstances and be an anchor for people, but you can also be worthless, right? And brittle. So that's a whole nother conversation. But keeping your ideals is 100% what we're suggesting. Just being able to talk to the other side,
Right.
either easier or so that it doesn't stress you out. Because that's the thing. Just I'm keep thinking back to the stuff I used to do to my grandparents. Now that I'm thinking about it, like just doing dumb shit, like wearing ripped pants. They hated ripped jeans. People don't even know what a ripped knee on a jean. I swear, I probably took years off my grandma's life by wearing like a jeans with a ripped knee on it.
Yep. Oh, and God forbid, right? I mean, and maybe it's just my part of the country, but God forbid you listen to rock and roll, or heavy metal or something, especially.
Shit, I didn't live in Footloose land, but no, I hear what you're saying. Like that's the thing. Like that's what's happening halftime. They call themselves liberal gun owners. I don't know. I listened to your interview with Laura, and the thing is, she came along after the fact, so she doesn't represent. She represents them, but she doesn't. I don't believe she was around for the beginning of it, so she'll tell because she know what originally instigated the thing and why they chose liberal gun owners. I have to assume that when it was created in 12, that the reason they named it that was something to do with the forums, because YouTube wasn't a thing in 12. It was barely a baby. There was certainly no community of any size, and definitely not in the gun community. There was definitely not any liberal gun owners that were feeling marginalized or not getting enough attention because they weren't even there, and we weren't even there yet, let alone little versions of the gun community. So more than likely, it comes from Calguns Forum, which is a massive forum, and if you've been on any forum, massive forum, not just a forum, but a massive forum. They're horrible, mean, ugly, mean places. People are mean. They get all upset and they take it out on people on the forum. They think it's great. It's just a horrible place for people that are mean to be mean to each other. And then there's just enough nice people in there to make it frustrating for people that are in the middle, right? Which is most everybody. So, it's just like you have to constantly tiptoe this minefield of a-holes. Like that was the worst part about forums and why I created my own forums back in the days, because going to a forum was super useful. Get the best data back in the day. It was the best data. I still believe a forum is a great, useful way to accumulate and archive knowledge if it can be maintained over time. That's the tough part. But the problem is you have to go in there in like a minefield. You have to step around these accounts that are a-holes, and you'd start to figure out like, okay, these are the biggest a-holes on the forum that are just gonna object and be jerks and like find everything they can possibly do to be jerks, because that's what their life is just, you know, I no one wants to talk to me, so I'm gonna go do stuff to instigate online, which will force people to reply to me if, you know, I can taunt them. So, you know, that whole troll thing, I guess, comes from them. Like, not like troll under a bridge, but like troll in a boat. Like, I'm going to keep throwing the line out and moving along so that eventually some fish will bite, but I can't fish in the same place because the fish will figure it out. So trolling comes from that concept of going through the forums, I believe, and maybe even the boards before the forums. The old boards, the message boards were even more ancient, but probably the same concept, right? I'm sure everywhere. It probably happened in what is that called? What was that called with letters back in the day? I keep saying love letters, but what was that called where you would have foreign exchange or something and you would have, there was a thing with letters though. I forget what it was called. And you would send letters to people in other countries. They would start kids doing it, or 4-H clubs or scout kids would do it.
I don't know. Almost like a pen pal type thing.
Pen pal. No, that's exactly what I was thinking of, pen pals. So anyway, I think that's where it all comes from, is that evolution of us all just trying desperately to have open places where we can have communication, and then having that weirdo go around. You know, it's sort of like a mall. Everybody liked the malls. It's just that they didn't have the fortitude or the balls or the inclination to go walk around being obnoxious in a mall, right? Like,
right.
They wouldn't do it in a mall, or they were too scared. But they can do it. And a mall is basically the internet. It's like a giant mall, so they can go be weird, you know, all they want, and then go home and nobody knows who they were. They think it's great.
Right.
Anyway, so we've been going for an hour. I think we still have an hour before the bullet starts. I sent out this thing a couple of hours early. I sent it out to like 32 something people. I don't have nothing to prove anymore. You know, I'm not an activist anymore. So I just did it because I do have some Patreons, and I do like to, you know, put the thing out there in case anybody shows up. Clover and a couple others show up on the regular. Appreciate that. But unless anybody else has any stuff to chat about, topic wise, my goal isn't to come on here and observe or re-witness anybody's opinions about, you know, casual news. I'd rather see the conversation evolve. Big picture wise, I think that we're sitting in a political situation where a party, right, and all the members of that party literally, what's the word, campaigned on removing firearms. And I guess it's possible to be in a better position than Obama had in the beginning of 2013. In the beginning of 2013, Obama, a Democrat, came into office with a majority Democrat in Congress, right? And that's when they passed things like Obamacare, the healthcare package that had been tried to be passed for decades before. You know, they did some major things for their party's objectives, or whatever they're called, like campaign platform things. But when they went to attempt to do that with firearms, there was a grassroots, you know, resistance to it, an objection that was loud enough to cancel, you know, what would seem a political give me. We're sitting in that very similar situation. I don't know, somebody who actually is paying attention to the radar and not just the news could challenge me, but is it even a better position on paper for an anti, you know, to have won a national election, even if it was, you know, by a hair or whatever, like they still won with that as their thing. It wasn't like when Hillary ran, she barely even talked about guns, right? Like everybody thought it wasn't even a big deal for her compared to this election. And again, when challenged, nothing. It's had 2 atrocities, murderers, you know, 3 now. And we're not seeing the kind of immediate like action plans going into place. All we're seeing is the same old boilerplate dusted off, brought to play in such, what's the word, like such draconian or whatever the word is, like it's just such crazy extreme laws that there's even debate on whether or not they're legit.
Right.
So, you know what I'm saying? Like, what are we sitting on here? I mean, why are we talking about the news? Why aren't we talking about, like, you know, what could be being done? We talk about court cases and things. I think that's important. You know, I'd like to see a national level leadership. I'd like to see somebody say, you know, we have this many things. We have legal cases. We have lobbying. We have people in jail, right? We have potentials, right? We have organizations that are floundering. We have organizations that are winning, right? And then have some sort of a national level, what's it called? Like what do they do for sports? Like if you're interested in ball games, you can just watch one show and they'll tell you what this kind of ball and that kind of puck and this kind of bat and that kind of wicket or whatever the hell all the sports shit is, right? You can learn all of that in one spot. Like some busy businessman who gives a shit about sports, right, can just go to one spot and learn all his sports. Why aren't the national level organizations giving us that micro shot of what's going on? Isn't that tech? That's super easy. That's easy to do with people. It's easy to do with technology. It's not expensive. It's useful. It evolves the conversation and the ability of the entire group. If you're looking for fame, holy shit, you're going to get it. And if you're looking for fortune, you put $1 on it and you're going to make it. Right. So, we've got a lot of people that are efforting and we don't have a lot of coordination or even, I don't even want to call it coordination because that would imply some sort of authority, but some sort of projection or offering recon, right? Some sort of national level, here's the playing field, do with it as you can, here's the intel, run with it. Certainly like to see that. It shouldn't be that hard in the days and age of being able to watch so many stock markets move on the fraction of a second. We have medical stuff that they pay attention to kinds of different things with medical stuff down to whatever, we have traffic resources like that, weather. We can't keep Second Amendment stuff. Man, I'd like to be able to pursue that. If Supreme Court start taking up 2A cases, is the potential to change a lot? Sure. That's the part that scares me. How come we don't have national level organizations so that we can start not making that an if, but when, and then demanding, right? Isn't that a thing? Wouldn't that be a different playing field if the gun community had such a powerful influence that we were demanding when things happen? And who wouldn't be jumping on board to be part of that community, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know. That'd be neat. So that's what we sit around here thinking about. Find it disturbing that SCOTUS is seemingly dragging their feet on here in 2A. See, I don't know enough about all that. And I don't know, I know we have organizations at the national level that push cases and they ask for support for the cases that go through. And that's typically financial support. So it's not like you can call a judge. Now, when there's lobbying type of stuff or potential bills, those same, because we only have 3 national level organizations anymore. 4, I guess. I'm saying FPC is probably the most active and useful of all the national levels. Then we got Second Amendment Foundation and GOA making noise. And then you've got the NRA wrapping it all up, right? So of those organizations that are doing stuff, they're all kind of trying to do it all, right? None of them they're definitely not playing zone. We'll do the care cases and we'll do the lobbying and we'll do the awareness. And I don't know if they should. I'm just saying that, that's one of the things that we have as people that are interested to try to keep track of all that. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I don't know who to go to hear about court cases and that. And it's not one of the things, I guess it doesn't happen fast enough or often enough that it's ever caught my attention. I certainly don't know much about it.
Right.
There's no way to threaten them or hold their feet to the fire. And I'm glad, because we wouldn't want judges that could be threatened, because we have organizations that are good at doing just that, right? But what we can do is show them influence through awareness, influence through social, whatever, moving that Overton window. Once it's a non-issue, once every one of the justices I shoot, why would they think that's bad? Then it's a non-issue. So I think you're right. There's no way we can force it, but we can certainly do things to shift. And even already a lot of efforts are being made in so many different directions that I think it's going to be tough for them to suggest that here's some law that'll secure it, or here's some law that'll stop it, or by ruling this way on a position, I think that's how you say it, ruling this way on a position, we're going to affect something. I think that they're going to just be more to the Constitution or whatever. Hopefully they're going to be more to the Constitution. This is either constitutional or it's not, right? Mm-hmm. Anyway, with that, I'm aware that there's a lot of stuff happening with that, but not any of the specifics of it, barely who's the people that are aware of it.
Right.
What have you got going on your radar? Anything coming up or that you worked on that would apply to Every Second Matters this month?
Well, I've been working and back and forth and making calls and talking and about, just some of the different legislative efforts here in Texas. But outside of that, as far as things on a national scale or anything, no, not particularly.
Oh shit, what happened? Oh, I opened up this minimized. My screen just changed completely. I clicked on the wrong thing. So
I will say this. I mean, I was going to have Dinah Muller on, and that really sucked. Not having her on, but of course she was headed to the Senate hearings, which is
that's rude.
you right. Well, she did. She gave me a heads up and said, hey, I'll probably be in the airport about the time of our scheduled thing. So how about we reschedule? And so I just didn't feel it was right to tell her that she couldn't go to the Senate. That would have been rude. So I'll let her go ahead and do that. No, I'm just joking. But yeah, nobody has watched any of that stuff. Every Second Matters. Today is a really good day probably to watch some of that. Chris Chang, for example, I mean, some of the questioning that he kind of went under with some of the senators, and of course his opening remarks, and highly advised. I mean, look up some of that.
Watch some of that. Required reading, more than highly advised for me. I'm saying that's required reading because that's what I was referring to earlier when, what is it? Dead Horse said something and I was responding to that. He said something like,
before I got here, maybe?
No, just a minute ago, about everybody for the new liberal gun owners. And I was trying to, because we went back and forth. We had a miscommunication there. I was basically saying that I'm with you. Like, I think there's too much.
You're chopping out a little bit there, G.
Feigning or falling.
Yeah, you're cutting out really bad now, G. So until, I don't know, we may have lost him. So yeah, G's going to refresh. So I'll keep this live. So no, I'll talk about that. So yeah, if you get an opportunity to check that out, definitely check that out. I mean, that's some of the allies we have in our corner, and it's super freaking amazing. Oh, got a bad echo. Super freaking amazing to have those for sure. And yeah, just wanted to. G's back now, but yeah, just wanted to say, yeah, definitely check those out. Just real quick for Texas. I mean, there's obviously we once again. And that's always the case here in Texas, every legislative session. But we've got several. I think we've had more constitutional carry or permitless carry. It's basically the same thing. Pieces of legislation submitted this session, I think, than we ever have. Of course, I've said for a long time, if you followed the channel, if you've heard me speak even before I did the YouTube thing, I think we've been moving in that direction here in Texas. The slow, methodical, the ground game approach is a lot of what we've been doing here in Texas. Now, granted, we've been dealing here with some rhinos, especially at the speaker level of the House. That has to do with the Texas legislature makeup. I don't want to get into all of that on this particular episode, but I'm happy to give people some history on the political landscape in Texas, the current landscape in Texas, and what I think the future landscape even looks like if you're wanting to have that conversation. But just saying that because we've had hurdles over the last few years and even decades. Also, not having a legislative session, but every other year here in Texas. You don't have a shot every year at doing stuff, right? So if you can't get it done, it's 2 years. That's a double-edged sword. That's great because politicians are, at least 1 year out of every 2, at least every other year, politicians can't screw anything up, which is great. One of the bills, one thing that I think is looking very promising, 2 things actually. Yeah, in Texas, that's looking very promising. I won't say that about constitutional carry. I don't want to jinx it. 2 things that look very promising is some type of carry legislation, carry thing will likely revolve around the license to carry with first responders. And I know our good friend used to hang out on gun channels and a lot of the chats. Trauma Jock is here in Texas, is EMS, I believe it is. And, really, he's really been kind of behind that and wanting that for some time and expressing why it's necessary. And then the second thing is some expanded measures for our license to carry. We don't have like a lot of states with our license to carry. We do not have the regular and then the enhanced. We only have just a license to carry. And I don't know that I'm a fan of having two different kinds anyway, but yeah, just opening up some different things, potentially even opening up license to carry in public schools, which is an interesting one. I mean, that's a little different than the whole teachers would be able to carry because the district could restrict some things. There's a lot of debate and stuff going on with that right now, but it's interesting. So now that G's back, and I've kind of thrown that out there. Yeah, I was talking about Chris and his testimony, and you were talking about Dead Horse, and you kind of cut out. We didn't get what you were saying.
Yeah, I can't tell if it's just windy here, or I think there might be also if you just say stuff too long, like if I'm too passionate and I say stuff for too long of a rant, then I think the signal just degrades, right? It's a streaming thing, potentially, packet size thing or something.
Yeah.
Like the buffer wears out or something.
You're going to have to do it in spurts then or something.
Well, I don't know. I just thought of that as I was refreshing. I'm like, I wonder if I was just ranting there for so long that I killed the buffer. But anyway, yeah, I was talking about Chris's thing. I was saying it's mandatory. I wouldn't consider that, if you got time, because it's a great example of what I was trying to say with Dead Horse. And I'm not good at saying this because I'm still trying to figure it out. But I'm not suggesting that we. I mean, it's always good to hear what other people think. I'm not suggesting you change what you feel or what you think based off what you hear one other person say once, obviously. But when you listen to how Chris explains his position, you gain the knowledge of how to translate. Is that the best way to say it? So by watching Chris, you understand that there are more positions. I've been saying this for a while, and I'm going to continue because I think it's the best way. It's the only way I've come up with trying to get this point across is that if we haven't won, and we haven't won, correct? We have not won the war yet.
No.
If we haven't won, why would we expect that if we just do the exact same thing louder or more often, that it's going to change anything? So if we're polishing our battle, our thing more and again and often and louder, then we're not doing anything except saying it over and over. And people are profiting by polishing that.
Yeah. So if you're bombing the wrong place, what good does it do to continue to bomb that place, right? Oh, we just need to bomb. That's the wrong place to bomb. But if we bomb it with a bigger bomb, right?
Or we can be better at bombing it. What if we bomb it more efficiently? Or what if we bomb it every Wednesday?
Yeah, it's the wrong place. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I guess that's sort of what I'm getting at is that, there's the thing evolves. And then the other thing is, I've said this one, I'm going to start using this one more often. Whatever worked for our grandparents doesn't work for us. Right. We know that, right? Yeah. We don't like their weird stuff and they think we're stupid. Right? Because most of us have grandparents. If you don't have grandparents, then just think some old person that likes 45 ACP. Right. You don't like what they like, and you're an idiot.
But
here's the other. Hold on. Here's the other side of that. Now get old, because if you're 10 years old and you just heard that, that's one thing. Now, when you're 100 years old and you heard that, you got to realize that them young kids are different than you. In the same way that you don't deal with your grandparents the way you want, they want. Those new kids, they have no obligation to do things our way. They didn't live in our world. They live in a whole new world.
That's true. But let me interject this. So, I mean, I'm sure you had respect for your grandparents, though, correct?
Oh, always. Here's my thing.
So how do we as quote unquote grandparents, that mentality, right? How do we adapt to the situation or to the point to where that younger crowd, though they don't like the way we do things and we don't like the way they do things, that at least there is some type of mutual respect that's there, right? Our grandparents loved us, and to an extent, our grandparents, as long as we weren't hoodlums, right? they probably said, "Hey,
Your
he's a good."
grandparents love you if you're a hoodlum too. Our grandparents.
Well, either way, you know what I'm saying. Your parents and grandparents were always like, "Oh, he's a good kid. You know, he's a hard worker." They had good things to say about you. Right? There was a respect there both ways.
Even though he wears ripped jeans, or even though he wears
right. So I think that I think you're onto something with that, but I also think that mutual respect and making sure how that gets cultivated and stays in place is a component as well.
No, that's 100%. Because I'm not talking to the kids. I don't care what the kids think. They're stupid. And they're going to listen to whatever because they already know it all, right? Here's what I'm talking to the old people. So exactly. So your question was, how do you get to the old people? And here's how I'm going to get to the old people. You're an old person already, and if you ain't, you're about to be. You're either going to be the old wise guy who sold that one guy what was that little Ewok thing called? The Gizmo guy? No, what the hell is that thing called? You just made a
the Mogwai. The Mogwai, yeah.
No, what the hell's the name of them things though?
It's a Mogwai. Gizmo?
No. What the hell's the name of that movie though?
Gremlins.
Gremlins. So you're either the old guy in the store who's selling the guy the gremlin, right?
He didn't sell him a gremlin. He sold him a Mogwai, and he told him what to do to keep it from turning into a gremlin without saying it ever became a gremlin. But we're parsing stuff, so go ahead.
Nobody knows what that means.
He got all passionate. He cut out again.
Oh, I did. Yeah, it might be windy.
I think it's when you talk too loud. I think you need to mellow out. You need to meditate for a minute, G.
No, it might be because when I muted, the signal strength got louder. Am I back now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be because of something. I got the volume up too loud, maybe. But anyway, yeah, I think it might be something that I trigger on my end. You're right. But anyway, I picked a bad example. I didn't really want to pick like the wise kung fu.
I get where you're
master,
going. I get where you're going with it. So I get where you're going with it. So go ahead, run with it.
You can either be the old guy who smarter than the youngins and useful and helpful, or you're going to be smarter than the youngins and annoying and an asshole.
Right.
Or maybe somewhere in between. And we're allowed to do both because we got good days and bad days.
Yeah. Well, it depends on what it's going to be about, right? Depends on what the conversation's
That's true too. No, that's true too. If the conversation's about what kind of chocolate frosting is going to be on the chocolate cake, then that has less significance than something.
So I had and I'll give you an example of respect with an elders, right? So I've got an elder that I had pretty much a knockdown drag out with yesterday. And elder being older than me, because she made the claim that, I don't eat fat-free Jell-O because fat-free stuff is nasty. And I said, all Jell-O is fat-free. What are you talking about? No, it's not. And it's gross. Fat-free Jell-O is nasty. And I said, unless it's prepackaged or you're talking about the pudding but if you're talking about the powder that comes in the little boxes that you mix with water and put in the refrigerator, yeah, even off-brand, all of that stuff is fat-free. Gelatin is fat-free. It's made out of bones. There's no fat. And it's got sugar, potentially, or it might be sugar-free. You sure you're not talking about sugar-free? And she argued with me forever before she finally admitted her ignorance that, she did not realize that all Jell-O was fat-free. So there's a time and a place where the younger crowd can set the older crowd straight.
No, and that's the thing. Then you have to. Sometimes it takes a while to get through because the old people have seen it a couple of times before. Mm-hmm. And every youngin that comes along, right, and goes, oh, "Sky's falling." Well, how many times an old person heard that already? And you know what? They've probably seen the sky fall 4 times. But if you heard somebody complain about the sky falling 400 times for the 4 times, that means you're only going to listen 1 out of 100.
Right.
So here, that's a good point. But it's, the old person has to be adaptable and the young person has to be willing to repeat themselves, I guess. And we all had to deal with that. And you can give up. You don't have to listen to every old person. You don't have to win every old person over either. I'm not suggesting that. Old people don't make them right. They're just righter than you most of the time.
Right.
But fine apes saying sugar-free, maybe not fat-free. But I think the thing is, here's how they make things fat-free. They put a bunch of sugar in it. So I wouldn't put it past a corporate food company producer to have labeled Jello fat free because they've already, they've already programmed people to buy fat free. So they could put fat free on water and somebody might buy it.
Sure.
And it's
That's why
true.
they do it. No, that's
But
why
you know what
they
I'm
do
saying?
it.
So it might be that she saw that somewhere and she went, oh, good. That's, because no, most people, and that's the other thing. I don't think
Because she
anybody
saw,
thinks
yeah,
about what's in their food.
yeah.
Nobody thinks about what Jello is made
Well,
out of. Very few people would eat Jello.
right. Well, yeah, that's in I don't want to get down that rabbit hole, but yeah, that's exactly what my take anyway. That's
Oh, I
exactly
mean,
what
that's
happened.
just any food. I
Some
mean, you eat
brands,
gross food like everybody.
some brands package theirs as fat free because it's all fat free. Some
Yeah,
brands don't care.
and nobody challenges them.
Some brands don't care whether or not they put fat free on the package. They know it's fat free. It says fat free in the nutritional
It's also
facts.
gluten free, but they don't bother, right?
Right. Exactly right. Yes. 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 Yes.
But then there are places that'll put gluten free on
Yep.
like obvious like lettuce and
Yep.
shit. Like, come on.
Right.
But and that's just again marketing. And if you're an idiot and you want to be, if you're conditioned to like, I need to see the label.
Right. Right.
All right. Well, so we're at an hour and a half. We still got a couple of minutes. I'll run right up until the Second Amendment, or I mean the Daily Bullet, whatever it's called. But I guess we were talking about if there was anything else this month. You talked about a couple of things. I started talking about Chris or whatever, and I started having internet issues. DM brought up how Chris was on G23 show a while back, and I don't know. He's saying he's a good 2A representative, but here's the trick: he could mean either one of them two motherfuckers because Chris is definitely good and doing stuff like getting in front of people, and that's what's frustrating is you'll listen to the people that just listen and observe and watch that don't actually, and then most of the people that just watch the people that they like to watch. They don't just watch everything; they watch the stuff that they like to hear. So so many people are blah blah blah. It's horrible, and everything's against us. Because if you need to tune in tomorrow, then there's no reason to say, good, see ya. Everything's good. See you next week. If you need them to tune in tomorrow, like you got to say something that'll get a person to turn in tomorrow. Right. So if you're looking for problems, you can find them.
That's why TV shows typically end on a cliffhanger, right?
Yeah, exactly. Chris, on the other hand, is out there doing stuff, and that could be a lot less satisfying. The
Right.
good roughage with like vitamins and minerals. It's satisfying and it keeps the body alive. And unfortunately, you only need so much of it to keep the body alive, and then the body can go just gorge itself on sugar soda and chips and sugar cereals, right? Because that every once in a while that like smoothie of Chris goes through there and keeps the entity alive. But he could also be talking about G23, who consistently puts out a live conversation every Saturday, in addition to things like that interview and other produced and other things he'll do to not just keep the community alive, but then offer some insight into his channel and his projects and stuff. But yeah, consistently every Saturday, keeping a conversation going, focused on 2A. Lots of people have a conversation going just to shoot the breeze, or keep blah blah blah, so they keep the center attention, or they keep their channel going, or whatever hell their instigations are. But not enough of them. Very few of them, in fact, will move the topic back to 2A, or will start another 2A topic if the conversation dies down. And while I am not able to watch it every Saturday because it's right in the middle of a Saturday afternoon, and just depending on the Saturday, that's not always possible to just watch it. It's awesome knowing it's there, and to have that consistent host do that is what keeps the community going. And even though Gun Channels isn't here, Gun Channels is still here because the people that want to be it are it, and that's the kind of stuff that is it. So thanks much to G23. So like I said, I don't know who he's saying is a good 2A representative, but as far as I'm concerned, both of them are good.
Both of them, yeah. And shout out to Guns and Barbecue, that crew that's doing the almost nightly stuff too, man.
We can't talk about that because of the legal situations that's going on, but because I am able to keep going based off of
the alleged show, man. Yeah.
No, he does all right. It does, it's keeping a late night chat. It's only 2 days out of the week, so there's opportunity for people to jump in there with something else or something after. He runs it for like an hour or something, but yeah, it's cool to see.
There was some great conversation in there last night, the 2A related stuff, which was nice. But yeah, a lot of good stuff out there. Tons of good stuff out there. If you can't find it, you ain't looking. Put it that way. Except for me, I don't do anything.
No, dang it. I was just gonna go off on some other thing, but then I got sidetracked on which one of them was the good 2A representative. But let's see. We've got about 25 minutes left, so I guess we'll just run it up until Daily Bullet does a show every day where they observe and witness what other people do and talk about it halfway for like a half an hour. I'm less and less satisfied. I continue to watch it, and I'll take what's given to us. I don't like getting what's given to us. I like wanting more and getting satisfied with more. I'd like to see him continue to grow. What do we get from the Gun Owners of America? We got Crump doing something on a fairly regular. I don't follow enough of their other state reps, but I think they just brought another state rep on. Pennsylvania? I can't remember. I was watching something somewhere. So they're doing it a little different where they are empowering their state reps to do shows. And, those I'm going to say hit or miss, even though that might be getting me into hot water. But then FPC for a while had the Coffee with Craig. I think it was every morning. And it was pretty much what Daily Bullet's doing, except with just Craig, right? He would go on for like 10, 15 minutes and just say stuff. I'm trying to remember, he didn't try to hit everything in the news. He would hit one or two things, if I remember right. But then, I don't know, it's tough to keep up. Here's where we're going to end it on, since we only got 20 minutes left. But it's tough to keep up with Craig because he's a grandpa. He's the head of a couple of nonprofits that are focused on like FFLs in California. And then the other one was something else focused on California. But then he's also inspiring. I think he acts as the same way that Ken Blanchard plays guitar because he enjoys it and gets satisfaction from it. So he's an actor in like things like movies and TV and stuff and like plays like he does it because he likes acting. And then he does these different podcasts. But I think he also has a job. Like he then does some sort of 9-to-5 job, I think. So if it's not, he's getting paid by each of those organizations. I don't know how he makes his money. I've never asked him, but he's certainly doing a lot of things, having a lot of hats. There's a lot of people like that in our industry. And I guess that's what I'm just going to let this go into. We get this, there was a post from Mom at Arms, I think, or was it Rebecca? You follow Rebecca Schmoy's Instagrams?
A little bit, yeah.
I like her. She does, weird stuff, and then the occasional, chicks do the inspirational thing. She does some of those inspirational ones that are good. They're like on point or whatever. Same way like Maj will do one that's kind of on point every once in a while. Not necessarily like apt to a issue in the news, because I don't really give so much shit about that, but like just, out of nowhere, here's something insightful or like apt, right? Like boom. All right, I'm gonna have to look for it specifically. I'm opening up another screen here, and it's just her name, Rebecca Schmoy. And a while back, I'm looking. So it's not like a picture. I'm having to read a couple of these things. So if there's anything else, is there anything else going on out there? Is the Polite Society podcast still at the same time on Monday, trying to keep midnight schedule announcements up to date? That's a good question. I used to have that schedule up, and I haven't been able to do that in a while. I think they're consistently on Monday, but as far as their time, I've never really paid attention, to be honest. I usually just have this one computer that I use as a TV, and I have a tab open with everybody who's going to be live that day. And then whenever they go live, it just starts making noise, and I can hear it. Oh, why was I going over to her thing now? All right, well, I can't remember exactly, maybe as I start explaining the rest here, but as we close out of here before the Daily Bullet starts up here, I think that, oh no, it was Mom at Arms. Why am I looking at Rebecca's? No wonder I can't find it. Mom_@_arms. All right, now I'm going back a few days. They post a lot, so I'm going back quite a few days actually.
Hey, I need to jump. I got something I got to take care of.
Yeah, take Take it
So,
easy. Thanks for
it's
jumping in.
been fun. Happy second, everybody. Bye.
I think this is the one in the chat. So we're going to go to share, and we'll just share just the Instagram. Will that work? We'll just share the Instagram. Boom, there it is. So I can move it all over my screen. It doesn't move for you. That's cool. So this is the Instagram post. It says over here, the 2A community is so oversaturated with so many great minds, constantly competing for the spotlight that no one knows who the real enemy is anymore. Next paragraph. The reason why gun control is winning is because gun control groups keep their pettiness for one another off social media. Instead of creating new groups and drama daily, they unite under a single institution for the sake of their agenda. And it says gun rights groups and influencers, though, and then a bunch of like laughing faces or whatever. So I understand that position, and I hear it all the damn time, and I've heard it more often than I'm interested in for years. Like for years, it's not new. It just gets expressed in different ways, and you're allowed to have that opinion. So here was my answer to it, and I'm gonna try shoving it into the duck over here, and I believe the duck will automatically smash that into multiple posts. Yes. So it looks weird because it took a lot more than 200 characters and divided it into multiple posts there. But my response was something to the effect of their side are employees. They work 9 to 5 and then go home and spend their earnings. In other words, they get paid and they enjoy it. They do their thing and they don't have to take it home from work. Our side are passionate individuals who are either eager to contribute, bitter their positions aren't appreciated, or fakes exploiting the situation. Or to sum it up, our side is real and like a family that isn't going to be pretty, tidy, nor efficient. But we are united by love of the individual and a common goal of freedom. We might not be walking straight up the steps directly to the door, but we are making a lot of progress. I followed up for her. The folks like you who lead by example are making a difference from my perspective, but that's for her. The people that are out there that aren't doing shit are watching it all happen. But if you've been sitting around old enough to watch this happen for a while, there's progress being made. And the people that are going to exploit the situation, that are going to profit off of your frustration or stress, they're never going to bring it out to the bird's eye view or in the historical perspective to show the ground we're making. There's only 3 people watching this. No one's even going to hear this because people aren't interested in this part of it. We're making strides. We're learning how to work together more than ever. It's not perfect, and it won't be, but there's progress to be made, and it's being made. So we'll continue to do this show, and it won't solve nothing, and we'll continue to do this show, and some people will show up, and some people won't, and other people will do their things. We're going to lose. We're going to win, and time will keep on ticking. So nobody's really watching anymore. We'll end it now. If you want to make a comment, feel free. If you don't, no big deal. Thanks for watching.